AITA for refusing to lend my sister a significant amount of money for a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity because of how she's treated me in the past. So this is going to be a bit long, but I want to lay out the full context so people can judge fairly. I, 29F, have a younger sister, Emma, 26F, and we've had a complicated relationship for years. Growing up, our parents always played favorites in subtle ways. Emma was the golden child, always praised for achievements, while I was constantly compared to her and made to feel like I wasn't good enough. I eventually moved out when I was 18 and didn't keep much contact because it was toxic to my mental health. Over time, we reconnected and tried to build a more mature relationship, but there are still some residual issues that complicate things. I have a steady job in tech and have been able to save a decent amount of money. I'm careful with finances because of how unstable my family's money habits were growing up, and I want to be responsible with what I've earned. Emma, on the other hand, has bounced between jobs and has struggled with financial responsibility. I've lent her money before, small amounts here and there, but she has a habit of taking advantage of my generosity and then vanishing when it comes to repaying or acknowledging it. The last time I lent her a few $100s, it took over a year for her to pay me back, and even then, she did it grudgingly and without apology. About a week ago, Emma called me in a panic. She told me she had an opportunity to buy into a business venture with a friend that she claimed was guaranteed to make huge returns in months. She's not a finance person, and I don't know her friend or the business. She asked to borrow $15,000 from me, saying she would pay me back within a year, and painted it as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that she couldn't pass up. I immediately said no. I told her I couldn't lend that kind of money, especially for a risky investment. I also reminded her that I had loaned her money before and had bad experiences with repayment, and that my priority is protecting my own financial stability. She immediately got upset and said I was selfish and that I didn't trust her, despite the fact that she has a track record of poor financial decisions and not honoring agreements with me. She also threw in a lot of guilt-tripping lines like, "I thought you were my sister. You care more about money than family. And I can't believe you would let me ruin my future because of fear." I stood my ground, but the conversation escalated. She started texting and calling multiple times a day, trying to wear me down. She even came by my apartment unannounced twice, which I found really invasive. I explained calmly each time why I couldn't lend her the money and that showing up at my place without warning was not okay. She left both times angrily, saying that I was ruining our relationship and that I was the worst sister ever. The rest of our family found out what happened because she vented to them. My parents are very involved in her life, and as expected, they took her side. They called me cold and unsupportive, arguing that it's my duty as her older sister to help her when she's in need. They said that $15,000 isn't a lot compared to what I have, and that refusing it was cruel. My friends mostly support my decision, reminding me that this is a huge sum of money and that I have no obligation to risk my financial security. Now, Emma is refusing to speak to me and has been posting passive-aggressive things on social media about siblings who don't support dreams. My parents have been subtly criticizing me whenever we talk on the phone. I'm starting to feel a little guilty because the family backlash is intense, but I still feel like I did the right thing. Lending her $15,000 for a high-risk, unverified business venture feels irresponsible and like a repeat of past mistakes. I also feel conflicted because part of me knows that if I had said yes, I would have been labeled the selfless sister and maybe temporarily appease my family and her. But I can't shake the feeling that this would have been a huge mistake financially and emotionally. I want a good relationship with my sister, but it feels like any interaction revolves around her needs and guilt-tripping rather than mutual respect. So, Reddit, AITA here? Should I have just swallowed my discomfort and lent her the money to keep the peace? Or was I right to protect myself financially, even if it upset my sister and family? If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow and motivates me to keep creating more great content. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a new upload. Thanks so much for your support. AITA for refusing to pay for my brother's wedding after he excluded me from the planning process. I, 33 am, I have a younger brother, Sam, 30M, and a sister, Emily, 28F. We've always been reasonably close, though Sam and I have had our fair share of disagreements over the years. Our parents split when I was 15, and I basically became a second parent to Sam. I helped him through high school, his first heartbreaks, and even financially when he got stuck during college. I've always considered myself someone who steps up for my family, and until recently, I thought my family appreciated it. Fast forward a few years, Sam met his fiancée, Rachel. From the beginning, I tried to be supportive, attending their early events and offering advice whenever asked. Around a year ago, they got engaged, and I started hearing hints about their wedding plans. I assumed, as is common in our family, that there would be discussions about expenses and responsibilities. However, once the planning got underway, I realized that Sam and Rachel weren't asking for input. They were making all the decisions themselves. I shrugged it off initially, thinking maybe they wanted a couple-only planning experience. But then, the issues started piling up. First, the venue. They picked a place 200 miles away from most of our family, including our parents, citing that it was special to them. When I asked if they wanted help with transportation or accommodations, I was told, "We got it handled. No need to worry." Fine. Next, the guest list. They invited nearly 300 people, many of whom neither Sam nor Rachel had any real connection to, while leaving out several people from our extended family who have been close to Sam for years. I asked, politely, why some family members weren't invited. Sam said, "It's a limited space situation," but when I pointed out that it seemed like they were prioritizing distant acquaintances over family, I was dismissed with, "It's our wedding. You'll see the final list soon." The tipping point, however, came when the topic of finances came up. Our family has a tradition where the siblings contribute to the wedding, usually in terms of help and sometimes minor financial support for things like decorations, the rehearsal dinner, or photography. I had assumed I would be involved in some capacity, not necessarily paying for the entire wedding, but at least helping coordinate or chip in as needed. Instead, Sam and Rachel sent me a detailed spreadsheet with a breakdown of all costs they expected me to cover. It included things like the DJ, catering for 50 extra guests, part of the floral arrangements, and a sizable chunk of the honeymoon. I was shocked. Some of these costs were astronomical, and none of them had been discussed with me before. While I voiced my concerns, Sam replied, "Well, it's traditional for siblings to contribute. You've been part of my life this long. You should want to help." I tried to reason with him, explaining that I couldn't realistically afford half the wedding, especially since I wasn't even being asked for advice or involved in the planning. I told him that I would happily contribute in other meaningful ways, like helping organize events, doing research, or even covering small, agreed-upon expenses, but I couldn't fund a significant portion of their wedding. Sam's reaction was explosive. He accused me of being selfish, unsupportive, and even ungrateful for all the times he's been there for me. Emily tried to mediate, but Sam was adamant that anyone who refused to contribute financially was automatically a bad sibling. Rachel chimed in too, saying I was being disrespectful by questioning their budget and their decisions. At this point, I stepped back and decided to only offer my time and effort in ways I could manage. I helped design invitations, coordinated a small part of the music, and even assisted with some DIY decorations. But when the bill for the DJ came, Sam sent me a text demanding my portion, which was nearly $2,500. I replied, explaining again that I was contributing in other ways but couldn't cover that amount, and I suggested splitting smaller costs that I could afford. He responded with, "If you don't pay, don't bother coming." I was furious. I've literally been a surrogate parent, emotional support system, and financial backup for him over the years, and now he's threatening to cut me out because I can't fund his entire wedding? I told him that I wasn't going to be bullied into paying for something I couldn't afford, and if he chose to exclude me over money, that was on him. Since then, the rest of the family has started taking sides. Mom and Emily understand my perspective and think Sam is being unreasonable. Dad is neutral but concerned about the tension. Sam refuses to speak to me beyond obligatory wedding-related messages and keeps insisting that I'm in the wrong for not supporting my brother's big day. The wedding is in 2 months. I've decided to attend only as a guest, paying for my own travel and accommodation, and not contributing anything beyond what I've already done. I know that might make him angry, but I also feel that being financially responsible for half a wedding I had no say in is unreasonable. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to pay for my brother's wedding when he excluded me from the planning and is now demanding large contributions? AITA for refusing to let my sister bring her children to my wedding after she publicly humiliated me at my own engagement party? This is a long one, so bear with me. I, 28F, have always been very close with my family, especially my younger sister, Emma, 25F. We've had a pretty typical sibling relationship, full of jokes, arguments, and occasional passive-aggressive moments, but overall I thought we were close. I got engaged about 6 months ago to my fiancé, Daniel, 30M, who I've been dating for 4 years. We're very happy together, and I'm genuinely excited about planning our wedding. My family has been very supportive, except for Emma, who has always had this habit of trying to one-up every milestone in my life. Here's the background leading up to the incident. My engagement party was a small gathering in my parents' house. I invited close family and a few friends. Emma has 2 children, ages 3 and 5, and I had asked her not to bring them because the party wasn't kid-friendly and it was supposed to be a quiet, adult-focused event. I also wanted to avoid the chaos of kids running around, considering the house isn't set up for that many children. Emma agreed at first, which I appreciated. During the engagement party, everything was going well until I was showing some pictures from a recent trip Daniel and I took. Emma started making really loud comments about how Daniel wasn't really serious about commitment because he hadn't bought a house yet, and she even said that my parents probably wouldn't approve of him because he doesn't make as much money as her husband. I was mortified and tried to steer the conversation elsewhere, but she kept going. The worst part was when she suddenly shouted, and honestly, if I were you, I'd think twice about marrying him before having kids. You don't want to ruin your life like I almost did with mine. At that point, I froze. Everyone was staring, and I could feel my face turning red. I wanted to defend myself, but I also didn't want to create a scene in front of my family. Daniel tried to calm the situation, but Emma doubled down, laughing at me and pointing out how dramatic I was being about a harmless question. My parents eventually managed to redirect the conversation, but the damage was done. I was humiliated in front of everyone I care about. After the party, I spoke privately with my parents, who agreed that Emma had crossed a line, but they also urged me to let it go because she didn't mean it maliciously. Daniel, however, was furious and suggested that I reconsider how much I allow her influence in the wedding planning. That night, I called Emma to address what happened. I tried to keep my voice calm and told her that her comments were completely inappropriate and hurtful. Her response was, "You're being oversensitive. I was just giving advice. You should be grateful I care so much about you." From that point on, I realized I needed to set boundaries. I decided that if she couldn't respect me and my relationship, I couldn't allow her behavior to negatively impact my wedding day. One of the biggest sticking points for me was her children. Emma had always had a habit of letting them run wild at family events, and I didn't want that to happen at a wedding where I want everything to feel organized and beautiful. I politely told her that her children would not be invited to the wedding, and she could bring a babysitter or leave them with family if she wanted to attend. I also mentioned that this decision was final and was about maintaining a stress-free environment, not punishing her personally. Her reaction was explosive. She accused me of trying to make her look like the bad parent and said that I hated her kids. She sent me a 20-minute voice note explaining that I was selfish, controlling, and that I'd never understand what it's like to be a parent. She also called my fiancé weak for supporting my decision. I responded calmly, reiterating that my decision had nothing to do with her parenting skills or her children personally, and that I just wanted a wedding environment where everyone could enjoy themselves without drama. She refused to accept this and has since been sending passive-aggressive texts like, "I guess I won't even bother coming then," or "It must be nice to have everything perfect just for you and Daniel." My parents are now caught in the middle. They think I might be too harsh on my sister and keep hinting that I should reconsider allowing the kids. My friends and Daniel are on my side, saying that it's my day and I have the right to enforce boundaries. I feel like Emma's reaction is disproportionate, and her behavior at the engagement party was a clear sign that she doesn't respect boundaries or decorum in family events. I also worry that if I allow her children to attend, she will use it as an excuse to create chaos or even undermine me in front of guests. The rest of the family is slowly starting to take sides, and I feel like if I back down now, I'll set a precedent that she can control my life whenever she feels like it. But on the other hand, I feel guilty that she might be genuinely hurt and feel excluded. I've tried to explain that this isn't personal, but she insists it is. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister bring her kids to my wedding after the way she humiliated me at my engagement party. Character count, 6578 if you want. I can also craft a second story with an even more dramatic twist and multiple family factions, which usually performs very well on Reddit. It could be around 6,900 characters to maximize engagement. Do you want me to do that next? AITA for refusing to let my sister bring her boyfriend to our family vacation after he made a controversial comment last year. So I, 32F, have a younger sister, Emma, 28F, and our parents love organizing annual family vacations. This has been a tradition since I was a kid, and usually it's me, Emma, our parents, and occasionally a few cousins. Last year, Emma started dating a guy named Ryan, 30M. At first, we didn't think much of it, but something happened that made me seriously question whether he should be invited to future family events. During last year's vacation, Ryan made a comment that I found extremely inappropriate. We were all sitting around the dinner table on the last night, talking about future career plans and travel goals. Ryan, who had barely known our extended family for a week, casually said something along the lines of, "Honestly, I don't get why women work after they have kids. It's just selfish. I'd never let my future wife do that." The room went quiet. My parents exchanged awkward looks. Emma immediately got defensive, and I just froze because I couldn't believe someone would say that in front of our family. Emma brushed it off, saying he was joking and that I was too sensitive. But I was so uncomfortable that the rest of the evening was tense, and I didn't really speak to Ryan much after that. I tried to let go, hoping it was a one-time comment, and maybe he didn't really mean it. But when I discussed it with my parents afterward, they agreed it was concerning, but thought I should try to give him another chance, especially since Emma seemed genuinely happy. Fast forward to this year. Our parents booked a week-long trip to a cabin in the mountains. Emma immediately assumed Ryan would be joining us. I didn't say anything at first because I wanted to see if Emma would bring it up. When she did, I told her that after last year, I was not comfortable having him there. I explained that his comment about women and work made me question his respect for people's choices and that I wasn't willing to subject our family to that kind of tension again. Emma flipped. She accused me of holding a grudge, said I was overreacting, and that he's changed since then. She argued that he's polite and charming now, and that our parents would be upset if he wasn't allowed to come. I reminded her that politeness doesn't erase what he said, and I didn't want the vacation to become awkward or hostile because someone in our group has a fundamentally different view on gender roles. Our parents got involved after Emma called them, and this is where it got messy. They sided with Emma, saying that family vacations are meant to be inclusive and that I was being rigid. They suggested maybe we could all try to get along and not bring up sensitive topics. I told them that wasn't realistic. Last year proved that there's a real difference in values, and pretending it doesn't exist just leads to resentment. Emma then started pressuring me, sending texts like, "If you can't be civil for 1 week, maybe you don't belong in the family vacation at all," which I found manipulative. She also pointed out that I'm the older sister and should set a good example by welcoming her boyfriend. I honestly feel like that's not my responsibility. I don't dislike Ryan as a person in every sense. He's fine outside of the context of discussions about women's autonomy. But I'm not willing to ignore red flags, especially in a family setting that's supposed to be safe and inclusive. I've also tried to compromise. I suggested maybe we could do separate activities, or that Emma and Ryan could stay at a nearby hotel and join us for dinner, if everyone felt comfortable. Emma rejected it outright, saying it would be awkward and that I'm trying to punish her. I feel like I'm being reasonable. I just want to avoid the tension and the chance that he says something offensive again in front of our parents and cousins. Our extended family has started weighing in as well. Some say I should just suck it up for 1 week, while others support me, saying that someone making a statement like that doesn't deserve a free pass just because they're dating a family member. I genuinely don't want to cause a family rift, but I also don't want to feel like I have to tolerate someone who clearly holds beliefs I find harmful, especially in what is supposed to be a relaxing, inclusive family environment. So now, the vacation is 2 weeks away, Emma is still angry, my parents are subtly pressuring me, and Ryan apparently doesn't know yet that he isn't invited. I feel like I'm a bad guy here because it's a family vacation, and people expect me to be welcoming, but I also feel like my boundaries and comfort should matter too. AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend come on the family vacation because of a comment he made last year. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her choice of bridesmaids. I, 28F, have always been very close to my sister, Claire, 32F. We grew up in a small town, and for most of our lives, we shared everything from our clothes to our dreams. Our parents are divorced, but both have remained very involved in our lives. Claire recently got engaged to her fiancé, Mark, 33M, and the planning process has been complicated, to say the least. The conflict started with her bridesmaids. From the beginning, Claire insisted that all of her bridesmaids must be people who truly understand her life journey. I didn't think much of it at first, assuming that she meant her closest friends and family, which I thought obviously included me. I was one of her only siblings and her oldest friend from childhood. So, naturally, I assumed I'd be asked to be a bridesmaid. However, a few weeks ago, Claire had a big announcement via a group text with all her bridesmaids. I was shocked to see that I was not included. Instead, the bridesmaids were her childhood best friend from middle school, who she hasn't spoken to regularly in years, Mark's sister, and 2 of his closest friends, a co-worker from her new job, whom she had known for about 6 months. No mention of me. I confronted Claire privately, asking why I wasn't included. Her response was, honestly, a punch to the gut. She said she felt I hadn't been a big part of her life lately and that I didn't really get what she was going through with planning and her new job. She also said she wanted a small, cohesive bridal party and that my presence might throw off the dynamic. I was crushed. I asked if I could at least be involved in some other way, like helping with decorations or hosting a pre-wedding event. She said no. She didn't want any extra obligations outside of the bridal party. At this point, I decided I would still attend the wedding because I love my sister and didn't want to cause drama with our family. I even bought a dress, arranged travel, and tried to keep my expectations low. Then came the next bombshell. Claire announced that she wanted me to sit at a completely separate table at the reception, away from both her and Mark's families. According to her, this was because she didn't want any tension from my presence. I tried reasoning with her again. I told her this felt like a huge exclusion, not just from the bridal party, but from being part of a significant life event for her. Her reply was that I was making it about me, and that she had to prioritize the feelings of the people who were actually in her inner circle now. At this point, I realized that attending under these circumstances would make me feel like a guest in my own sister's wedding, someone there only to fill a seat. I told Claire that I would not attend, explaining that I couldn't celebrate her day while feeling completely alienated. She immediately blew up at me, saying I was being dramatic, selfish, and that I was throwing away our relationship over a chair at a wedding. She also accused me of trying to punish her for moving on with her life. Our parents are divided. My mom thinks Claire is in the wrong for excluding me and that I have every right to feel hurt. My dad, on the other hand, thinks I'm overreacting and that family relationships aren't contingent on being in the bridal party. Mark's family is reportedly confused but supportive of Claire's decision, saying it's her wedding and her choice. Since then, several family members have tried to convince me to just suck it up and attend. My friends are all saying that Claire is being controlling and that I should absolutely stand my ground. I haven't spoken to Claire in over 2 weeks because I feel like anything I say will be twisted into me being the bad person. Part of me feels guilty because it is, indeed, her wedding, and I don't want to ruin her special day. On the other hand, I feel like she has deliberately alienated me and that attending would make me feel humiliated. I keep going back and forth between thinking I'm justified and worrying I'm overreacting. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her choice of bridesmaids and seating arrangements. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé's child come live with us temporarily. I, 29F, live with my fiancé, Mike, 31M, in a small two-bedroom apartment in the city. Our living space is tight, but we've worked hard to make it cozy and functional for the two of us. I love Mike's family, especially his younger sister, Sarah, 27F, who I've known since high school. She's always been bubbly and outgoing, but she has a habit of making impulsive decisions that end up causing drama. A couple of months ago, Sarah got engaged to Tom, 30M, who has a 7-year-old son, Liam. I met Liam a few times at family gatherings, and he seems like a sweet kid, though very energetic. Sarah and Tom have been living together in Tom's small one-bedroom apartment. I knew things were a bit crowded over there, but I figured they'd figure something out. Last weekend, Sarah called me out of the blue. She sounded frantic and upset, and immediately asked if Liam could come stay with me and Mike for a few weeks because she and Tom were having relationship troubles and needed space. She emphasized that it would only be temporary and that Liam would sleep in the living room, use the couch, and that she and Tom would pay for any extra expenses. At first, I was shocked. Our apartment is tiny. We already struggle with storage and space for our own stuff, and our couch is just big enough for movie nights. We don't even have a guest bedroom. I explained this to Sarah calmly and said that we really couldn't accommodate a child long-term, especially one we don't live with, and that Mike and I needed our home to remain our sanctuary. I suggested she and Tom look into a short-term rental or see if any of Tom's extended family could help. Sarah didn't take this well. She got really emotional, saying things like, "I can't believe you're choosing your comfort over my son's safety, and you've always been selfish, and now I see it clearly." She accused me of being cold and uncaring. She said Liam was in a fragile state because he's been upset about the fights between her and Tom and that he really needed a safe space, implying that Mike and I were abandoning him. Mike was on my side, but he's more conflict-averse, so he suggested we compromise by maybe letting Liam come for a weekend just to see how it goes. I tried to reason with Sarah again, saying that even a weekend could be stressful for Liam because he's in a new environment and that it would be hard for us to maintain our daily routine with work and other responsibilities. I also pointed out that he has his parents there to support him and that sometimes kids need to learn to cope in their own family situation. Sarah's reaction escalated. She sent me multiple messages over 2 days, guilt-tripping me with photos of Liam looking sad and text messages about how all his friends' parents would never say no and how Mike's family always puts themselves first. She even copied some of her friends in the messages, presumably to pressure me. At this point, I blocked her messages for a few hours to avoid a mental breakdown. When I unblocked her, I received a very angry email from Tom, saying that my refusal was irresponsible and hurtful, and that I had no empathy for a child in need. He threatened that if we didn't reconsider, they might have to escalate the situation legally, although I'm not entirely sure what he meant. Mike and I laughed nervously at this, because Liam is clearly still under Tom and Sarah's custody, and there's no legal way they could force us to take him. Since then, family events have been tense. Sarah barely speaks to me, and Tom openly glances at me during holidays like I'm the villain. Mike and I have discussed temporarily going low contact with them until things cool down. Some mutual friends have said I'm being too rigid and should help Liam, while others have said I'm justified because our home is not a daycare and it's not our responsibility to house someone else's child. I tried to explain to Sarah and Tom that we care about Liam, and we can spend time with him on weekends, take him to parks, invite him over for occasional sleepovers with proper planning, but that bringing him to live in our apartment for weeks is just not possible. I also mentioned that it could damage our relationship with Mike if we compromised our space in such a way. Mike supports me 100%, and he thinks I'm doing the right thing by not letting our small apartment become a battleground for someone else's family drama. However, I still feel torn. I know Liam might be sad. I don't want to be the bad guy in his life. But at the same time, I've never had to manage a child full-time, and our lifestyle isn't suitable for it. AITA for refusing to let Sarah and Tom's child live with us temporarily. Character count 6, 400 characters, including spaces. If you want, I can also write a slightly longer version that pushes closer to 7,000 characters with extra dialogue, tension, and more internal thought to make it read even more like a viral Reddit post. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend move in after she asked me to. This is going to be long, but I'll try to give all the details so it makes sense. I, 28F, live in a small 2-bedroom apartment in the city. I've been living here for about 4 years now, and honestly, I love my space. It's modest, but it's mine, and I work really hard to maintain it. I rent, but I've decorated it to feel like home, and I genuinely enjoy my little routine here. My younger sister, Emma, 25F, has always had a bit of a chaotic personal life. She's sweet and funny, but her relationship choices are unpredictable, to say the least. A few months ago, she started dating a guy named Luke, 27M. At first, he seemed fine, funny, charming, the usual. I try to keep an open mind because Emma had finally found someone who made her happy, and I didn't want to be the mean older sister who was skeptical from day one. Over time, Luke started coming over more frequently. At first, it was just dinners or movie nights, which I was fine with. I get that she wanted to spend time with her boyfriend, and I could deal with that. But then things escalated. He started dropping by unannounced. He would leave his things here, jackets, shoes, sometimes even toiletries, without asking. I mentioned casually a couple of times that it was my apartment, and I needed him to respect my space, and he would laugh it off and promise to be more mindful. It didn't really change anything. About a month ago, Emma called me in a panic. She and Luke had gotten into a huge argument, and he apparently needed somewhere to stay for a couple of days while he figured things out. She begged me to let him crash at my place. I was hesitant because I had just gotten my apartment organized after a stressful couple of weeks at work, and the last thing I wanted was to suddenly host someone I barely knew. I explained this to her and said I couldn't just let him stay, even temporarily. She got upset and accused me of not being supportive and turning my back on her. I tried to explain that it wasn't about her, it was about my boundaries, but she wouldn't listen. Then, things got worse. Last weekend, Emma came over unexpectedly. She had tears in her eyes and was saying that Luke had nowhere to go, that he had been kicked out of his own apartment by his roommate, and she really needed me to help him out just for a week. I told her no again. I even offered to help her find a short-term rental or a hotel, but she said that wasn't enough and that I was being cold and selfish. After a lot of back and forth, she left in tears, muttering that I didn't care about family. A few days later, I came home from work and found Luke sitting on my couch. He said he just needed a place to crash for a couple of hours because he didn't want to be on the streets. I was shocked. I told him firmly that he couldn't stay and that he needed to leave immediately. He argued a bit, saying that I had let Emma stay at my place before, which is true, but she had been dealing with temporary housing issues years ago, and I had set strict boundaries, and that I was being unreasonable. I called Emma, and she showed up yelling, insisting that I let him in. I refused, and finally, they both left. Since then, Emma has been giving me the cold shoulder. She won't answer my calls, and she's been posting things on social media about people who don't help their family. A few of her mutual friends have reached out to me, and the consensus seems split. Some think I was right to set boundaries, while others think I should have at least let him stay temporarily. I feel like my home is my sanctuary, and I have every right to say who can and cannot stay there. I also feel like if I let him in, it would set a precedent that I can't say no to people, and that would be terrible for my mental health. But I also can't shake the guilt of seeing my sister so upset, and part of me wonders if I should have found a compromise. Maybe letting him stay one night, or helping more actively with temporary arrangements. To complicate things further, Luke has apparently started telling mutual friends that I turn my back on family and don't care about people in need. This feels unfair because I am always willing to help family within reason, but I also believe there are limits. So, Reddit, AITA here? Was I wrong to refuse to let my sister's boyfriend move in, even temporarily? Or am I justified in setting strict boundaries in my own home? AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding after she asked me to change my entire house and lifestyle for it? I, 32F, have always been close with my younger sister, Emily, 28F. We grew up in a small town, and while our parents were loving, they weren't exactly the event planning type. I've always had a knack for organization and decor. So, over the years, I've become the go-to person in the family for anything related to parties, holidays, and other celebrations. My home is my sanctuary, a small, cozy place in a quiet neighborhood, with lots of personal touches and a minimalist style I've cultivated over the years. I love it the way it is, and I've worked hard to make it comfortable for myself. A few months ago, Emily got engaged, and she immediately started talking about her dream wedding. She's always had a flair for dramatics and is a bit of a perfectionist, which I generally admire, but sometimes it can be exhausting. She initially asked if I would host her wedding at my house. I was surprised, honestly, because my home is tiny. I have a living room that seats maybe 12 people comfortably, a modest backyard, and a kitchen that can barely fit more than a few people at a time. I told her I was worried about the space, but she insisted she could make it work and said it would mean so much to her to have it at my place. I tried to be accommodating, but I also started setting boundaries. That's when things started to escalate. Emily started sending me Pinterest boards, links to videos and magazine spreads, all featuring weddings that are the complete opposite of my home. She wanted elaborate floral arches, a rented dance floor, professional lighting, a tent in my backyard big enough for 200 people, and a caterer that would require me to temporarily remove half my furniture. I tried to explain that my house just wasn't suitable for that kind of setup and that I didn't have the time, money, or energy to orchestrate such a massive event. She responded by saying, "If it's really about our relationship, you'll figure it out." I thought I could compromise. I suggested a smaller, intimate wedding at my place, maybe 20 to 30 close friends and family. Emily called it unimaginable and not how she envisioned her special day. She then dropped the bomb. She wanted me to completely renovate my living room and backyard for the wedding. Specifically, she asked me to repaint my walls, replace all my furniture with rented items, install permanent lighting fixtures, and even move some of my personal belongings into storage for a few months. She also suggested that I might consider temporarily relocating to a friend's apartment for the duration of the wedding prep, which would last at least a month. At this point, I was shocked. I've spent years creating a home that I love. Asking me to essentially strip my house bare and live somewhere else, just so she could have her dream wedding, felt completely unreasonable. I told her no. I tried to explain that I understood she wanted a beautiful wedding, but I couldn't sacrifice my home and lifestyle to meet her vision. She got extremely upset, accusing me of being selfish, unsupportive, and not valuing our relationship. Things got worse when she involved my parents. They were sympathetic to her, saying that maybe I could find a way to make it work, and reminded me of how much I enjoy hosting family events. Emily even threatened to cancel her wedding entirely if I didn't comply, claiming it would ruin her entire life and that she would never forgive me for not helping her. I've offered alternative solutions. I suggested renting a venue nearby, hosting the rehearsal dinner at my house, or even helping her plan and decorate at a different location. She refused all of them, saying it wasn't the same. She keeps insisting that her dream wedding can only happen at my house, exactly the way she's imagined it. I've started to notice a divide among family and friends. Some people understand my side. They know my house isn't a wedding venue, and that my sister's demands are extreme. Others think I should just make it work for her big day. The stress has started affecting my work, my health, and my mental well-being. I feel like I'm being forced to choose between my home, my personal boundaries, and my sister's happiness. I also worry that if I do give in, it will set a precedent. Emily has a history of asking for things that are unreasonable and guilt-tripping people into compliance. I can see a pattern where giving in once leads to future demands, and I don't want to live my life constantly bending to her whims. I don't want to ruin my relationship with Emily, but I also can't compromise my life and home for a single day. I've tried explaining that there are other ways to have a beautiful wedding and that being together as a family is more important than a Pinterest-perfect setup, but she doesn't seem to hear me. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding at my home when it would require me to completely change my lifestyle, home, and temporarily move out just to accommodate her dream vision. Character count, 6,457 if you want. I can craft a second story that's even more dramatic and morally ambiguous to really capture that viral Reddit AITA vibe, hitting closer to the 7,000 character limit. Do you want me to do that? Hey friends, if you're enjoying the content, don't forget to hit the like button and share your thoughts in the comments. We genuinely want to know what you enjoy and what we can improve. What did you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future uploads? Your feedback helps us get better every day. Thanks for sticking with us. AITA for refusing to help my sister after she ruined my wedding and then guilt-tripped me for not forgiving her. I, 32F, have always been close to my younger sister, Lily, 28F, despite her being a bit of a wild card. Growing up, she was the charming troublemaker type. Fun to be around, but often reckless. I love her, but I've had my fair share of experiences where I had to pick up the pieces after she made impulsive decisions. Fast forward to last year. I was engaged to my fiancé, Mark, 34M, and we've been planning a pretty intimate wedding. We decided on about 80 guests, and I wanted it to be a relaxed, cozy event without a ton of drama. Lily insisted she wanted to help with the planning, and I hesitantly agreed, knowing that if I didn't give her a role, she'd probably try to insert herself in ways I couldn't control. I asked her to handle guest coordination, meaning she'd confirm RSVPs, help with seating arrangements, and manage some minor logistical tasks like providing directions for people unfamiliar with the venue. At first, everything seemed fine. Lily was upbeat, enthusiastic, and genuinely seemed excited to help. But then the problem started. She kept asking me for money for wedding emergencies, like last-minute decorations, transportation for friends she invited without consulting us, or gifts for the bridal party she decided we needed. I politely declined multiple times because we had a set budget, but she kept pushing. The breaking point came 3 days before the wedding. Lily revealed she had invited an extra 15 people without telling me. Most of them were her friends, some of whom I'd never met. She said she didn't think it would be a big deal and assumed we'd just figure it out. Of course, this meant we had to scramble for extra chairs, more food, and additional accommodations. Mark and I were stressed, but I tried to remain calm. I told her she needed to take responsibility and fix the situation, but she just shrugged and said, "It's your wedding, not mine. You'll figure it out." Then, on the day of the wedding, things went from bad to catastrophic. Lily decided to make her own toast at the reception, which turned into a long, emotional speech about how I had always overshadowed her growing up and how she had always felt like she was in my shadow. People were uncomfortable, and I was mortified. She didn't apologize or acknowledge that this was inappropriate. Instead, she acted like I was being dramatic for feeling hurt. After the wedding, I cut contact with her for a few months because I needed space. I was hurt, embarrassed, and felt betrayed by someone I trusted. Mark supported my decision, and my parents were sympathetic, though they didn't fully understand why I was so upset. They've always been more lenient with Lily's antics. Fast forward to last week. Lily called me, crying, saying that she was going through a hard time financially and emotionally, and she needed help moving into a new apartment. She said she had no one else to turn to, and that I was the only person she could rely on. I listened, but I didn't immediately offer to help. I reminded her of the wedding incident and told her I wasn't ready to forgive her yet, especially since she had never acknowledged the hurt she caused. She blew up on me. She accused me of holding grudges, being selfish, and being a terrible sister. She said I owed her for all the help she had supposedly given me in the past, and that it was cruel to refuse to help someone in need. She even hinted that if I didn't help her, our parents might see me as the villain. I explained calmly that helping her now would feel like I was condoning her past behavior, which I'm not ready to do. I also said that I might consider helping her in the future if she showed genuine remorse, but not before. This set her off even more. She called me heartless, selfish, and accused me of ruining our family relationship forever. I feel torn because part of me thinks maybe I should help her. She is my sister, after all, but the other part of me thinks she has burned her bridges. She's a grown adult, and she made her choices. Why should I bear the consequences of her recklessness and emotional manipulation? My friends are mostly on my side, saying that it's okay to set boundaries with family, but some people are saying I should help her because she's in a vulnerable position. I haven't spoken to her since the argument. I'm wondering if I'm overreacting or being unreasonable by not helping her move. I don't want to enable her behavior, but I also feel guilty for turning my back on my sister. AITA for refusing to help my sister after the way she treated me during my wedding, and then guilt-tripping me for not forgiving her. AITA for telling my sister that she can't bring her new boyfriend to my wedding after she repeatedly disrespected me and my fiancé. So, this is going to be long, but I need to get all the details out to see if I'm actually the asshole here. I, 28F, have been engaged to my fiancé, Alex, 30M, for about a year. We've been together for 6 years, and our relationship has been incredibly stable, loving, and supportive. Wedding planning has been stressful, as it is for anyone, but we've managed to keep it relatively smooth so far, except for my sister, Rachel, 26F. She has been a thorn in my side for several years, but it's really escalated with the wedding planning. Rachel and I have always had a complicated relationship. Growing up, she was always extremely competitive with me. Not just playful sibling competition, but a full-blown, I need to prove I'm better at everything than you type of rivalry. Our parents encouraged it, which didn't help. As adults, she's mellowed a bit, but she's still very dramatic and self-centered. For example, when I got my first apartment after college, she complained that I didn't invite her to help me decorate, even though she lived across the country. When I graduated from grad school, she made a big scene about how she hadn't been recognized in the same way and accused me of hogging all the family attention. It's exhausting. Fast forward to wedding planning. I initially invited Rachel to be my maid of honor, but about a month later, she told me she didn't want to stand up at the wedding because she doesn't like public speaking and can't deal with all the stress of a wedding. That's fair, I thought, and I accepted it, though I was a bit hurt. After that, she was supposed to attend as a guest. The problem started a few months ago. Rachel met a new guy, Mark, who she's been dating for 3 months. She was super excited about him and wanted him to come to the wedding. Initially, I was okay with it. Everyone is allowed to bring a +1. But then she started behaving in ways that were frankly rude and inappropriate during wedding planning. A few examples. She insisted on bringing Mark to my dress fittings, even though I told her multiple times that this is a private moment and only my mom, Alex, and my best friend should be there. She got angry and accused me of trying to shut her out of my life. She repeatedly made passive-aggressive comments about my fiancé, saying things like, Alex is really lucky to have you. But are you sure he's good enough for you? And you've changed since you met him. I hope you're happy. This escalated after Mark started making comments too, like laughing when she made jabs at Alex. At the bridal shower, she drank too much and loudly complained that the cake flavor wasn't what she wanted, that my playlist was so boring, and she made a scene about not having her preferred seat at the table. Mark joined in, making jokes at my expense in front of my family. Alex and I were humiliated. She began sending me endless texts about how the wedding should be different, more extravagant, less traditional, etc., and implied that if I didn't change things for her, she might not enjoy it. It got to the point where I was anxious every time I had to talk to her. After the bridal shower incident, I told her I needed some boundaries. I asked that she respect our decisions and understand that the wedding is about me and Alex, not about her. She apologized half-heartedly, but immediately started inviting Mark to all the planning events anyway, even after I explicitly said no to extra guests for things like the rehearsal dinner. A few weeks ago, Alex and I sat down and decided that we simply cannot have Rachel bring Mark to the wedding. I feel like between the disrespect, the public humiliation at the bridal shower, and the constant boundary crossing, his presence would make us uncomfortable and possibly ruin the day. I told Rachel this very calmly in a text, explaining that due to past behavior and repeated boundary violations, Mark will not be allowed at the wedding. Her response was explosive. She called me selfish, controlling, and accused me of attacking her happiness and trying to ruin her relationship. She even threatened not to come to the wedding at all, saying that if Mark isn't invited, she will stay home. She has sent me about 30 texts since then, each one escalating in tone, accusing me of being a bad sister, a bad person, and saying that I hate her boyfriend just because he's new. Now my parents are involved. They think I'm being too harsh and that I should just let her bring him so she's happy, but Alex and I are firm. We're not okay with someone who has publicly disrespected us and disregarded our boundaries being part of our wedding day, especially since the wedding is supposed to be a positive, safe environment for us and our families. I feel guilty because I know Rachel will be upset. I do love her, but I also feel like her behavior has crossed a line. I've been called the asshole by some family members, but others say I'm justified. I don't want to ruin my relationship with Rachel, but I also don't want to compromise my own happiness on my wedding day. So Reddit, AITA for telling my sister that she can't bring her new boyfriend to my wedding? AITA for telling my sister she can't bring her new boyfriend to my wedding after she said he doesn't need to be invited? I, 28F, am getting married in 6 months, and while my fiancé and I have been planning the wedding, things have gotten unexpectedly complicated with my sister, Sophie, 26F. Sophie has always been a bit dramatic, but I love her, and I thought she'd be excited for the wedding. However, the past couple of weeks have been a nightmare. When we first sent out the save the date notifications, Sophie asked if she could bring a +1. I didn't think much of it and said yes, not realizing she had been dating someone new who she didn't formally introduce to me or my fiancé. Fast forward to 2 weeks ago, she called and casually said, "Oh, by the way, you don't need to invite Alex to the wedding. He doesn't really fit in with our family, and honestly, I don't think it's worth it." I was shocked. I paused and said, "Sophie, it's your boyfriend. If you want to bring someone, he's welcome. It's not our job to decide who fits in and who doesn't." She immediately got defensive and said I was overreacting, claiming I was being controlling and judgmental about a relationship. I tried to explain that weddings are about celebrating with loved ones, and if she wanted to bring someone, it shouldn't be conditional on my approval of him. She dropped it for a day or two, and I thought we were past it. Then yesterday, things escalated. My fiancé and I were finalizing the guest list with the caterer when Sophie texted me, "I'm not bringing Alex. He said he doesn't need to be invited anyway. Plus, I think it's better if he isn't there." I responded, "Sophie, this isn't your decision to make. If you want to bring him, he's invited. You can't just decide he's not allowed." Her reply made my blood boil. She wrote, "Honestly, I think it's fine. He's not really close to the family. Everyone will be fine without him. You're making it weird." At that point, I realized she was trying to manipulate the situation so she could avoid bringing him without technically breaking the rules, and I wasn't having it. I replied, "Sophie, the wedding is not a place for you to control who is or isn't invited based on your own opinion. If you bring Alex, he's welcome. If not, that's your choice. But you cannot decide for me who gets an invite." After I sent that, she called me, screaming about how I was forcing her to bring a boyfriend she barely knows me to into a formal family setting. She claimed I was overreacting about nothing and making a huge deal about a guest list that doesn't even affect me. I tried to reason with her calmly, but she hung up, saying I was being unreasonable and unfair, and that she might not come to the wedding at all. Now, I'm in a weird place. I love my sister, and I want her there, but I also feel like she's trying to control the wedding experience in a way that's completely inappropriate. My fiancé supports me and says we should just leave it as I stated. If she wants to bring Alex, she can, but she can't just decide not to invite him on my behalf. My parents are split. My mom thinks I should back down to avoid drama, and my dad thinks I'm right, but worries Sophie might not show up at all, which would be a huge blow to the family atmosphere. My friends are divided too, with some saying I'm justified in setting boundaries, and others saying I should let her choose her own path and avoid conflict. I'm posting here because I want to check if I'm really the AH. From my perspective, I'm not trying to control her relationship. I'm just trying to make sure she doesn't manipulate the guest list or make unilateral decisions that affect my wedding. But I keep second-guessing myself, especially because now there's a chance she won't attend at all. So AITA for telling my sister she cannot decide on my behalf whether her boyfriend is invited? Additional context that might matter. Sophie has a history of getting upset if she doesn't get her way at family events. She also tends to frame reasonable boundaries as personal attacks. I've tried talking to her calmly about boundaries before, and it often results in her feeling attacked or shutting down entirely. I feel like this is one of those moments, but it's for my own wedding, so I feel I have a right to enforce boundaries. I'm trying to stay calm and fair, but I also don't want to let this escalate into a full-blown family drama right before my wedding. Any advice or insight would be really appreciated. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of a family secret. I, 28F, come from a family that most people would describe as close-knit, but that's always been a bit of a double-edged sword. Growing up, my younger sister, Emily, 26F, was the golden child. She excelled in school, athletics, and just generally seemed to charm everyone around her effortlessly. Me? I was more introverted, not particularly athletic, and prone to overthinking everything. Our parents made it clear, even subtly, that Emily was their favorite. I don't resent my sister for this. She didn't ask for it. But it did shape how I navigated our family. Fast forward to about a year ago, Emily got engaged to her fiancé, Dan, 27M. Everyone was thrilled, and naturally, the wedding planning began. I was happy for her on the surface, but I've always had a complicated relationship with my family, and this event was going to put me right back in the middle of it. About 6 months before the wedding, I accidentally overheard a conversation between my parents and Emily that completely blindsided me. It was one of those moments where you catch a sentence and suddenly realize there's a whole context you weren't supposed to know. They were talking about a trust fund that Emily would inherit when she got married, something they had never discussed with me or even hinted at. I did some digging in the family files, stuff left out in the open but never really explained, and I found out that there's a legal clause that specifically prevents me from accessing any part of the family estate because my parents had concerns about my spending habits and financial responsibility. I was hurt and angry, but also terrified of how bringing it up would be received. My parents are very traditional and believe that family disputes should be swept under the rug, especially before major events like weddings. When I confronted them, asking why I had been left out or treated differently, they brushed me off, saying things like, "You'll understand when you're older, and it's not about you. It's about Emily's future." I tried to let it go for a while. I even agreed to attend a rehearsal dinner and help with minor tasks, because I didn't want to ruin her big day. But the closer the wedding got, the more I realized I couldn't just ignore the resentment building inside me. I felt like my whole life had been undervalued, like my parents had always had a favorite, and it just happened to be Emily. Then, a week before the wedding, I received a message from Emily. She told me that Dan's parents had requested a family harmony meeting the day before the wedding, where all close family members would discuss family dynamics and expectations for the ceremony. She said it was just a formality, but from past experience, I knew that meant she expected me to stay silent and smile while the whole conversation revolved around her accomplishments and Dan's family. I decided I couldn't do it. I called Emily and told her that I wouldn't be attending the wedding. I tried to explain as gently as possible that it wasn't about her. It was about my own need to step back from a family environment that has always felt unequal and dismissive. I also mentioned the trust fund issue, not as a bargaining chip, but as context for why I felt hurt. She was shocked. She cried and accused me of making everything about money and ruining her happiness. My parents called me too, saying I was being selfish and letting old grudges ruin a once-in-a-lifetime day. Since then, the fallout has been intense. Mutual friends are divided. Some agree that family favoritism and secrecy are serious issues, while others think I'm being dramatic over something that doesn't even affect me anymore. Emily has refused to speak to me since, and my parents have been passive-aggressively sending me messages about how disappointed they are. I feel conflicted. On one hand, I know my feelings are valid and that I shouldn't sacrifice my mental health and boundaries for the sake of appearances. On the other hand, I worry that I've caused irreparable damage to my relationship with my sister and family. I've considered attending a post-wedding celebration or sending a gift, but I'm not sure if it would feel genuine or just like a hollow gesture. I also don't know if this will permanently cement my estrangement from Emily or if time might soften things. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of long-standing family favoritism and a secret trust fund I was deliberately excluded from. The emotional weight of this situation is huge, and I'm trying to navigate it without completely burning bridges but I also refuse to sit quietly while my feelings are dismissed. I just don't know if standing up for myself in this way makes me the bad guy. AITA for refusing to let my half-sister's fiancé stay at our family cabin after he insulted me in front of everyone. I, 28F, come from a somewhat complicated family setup. My parents divorced when I was very young, and both of them remarried. My dad's wife has a daughter, Lily, 30F, from a previous marriage. So, technically Lily is my half-sister, though we never grew up together. We've always had an okay relationship, cordial but not super close. A few months ago, Lily got engaged to a man named Eric, 32M. I had met him a couple of times before the engagement, and honestly, I didn't think much of him one way or the other. He seemed polite enough, if a little distant. My dad and stepmom are big into family traditions and have this old cabin up in the mountains that they've been renting out to relatives for decades. Every summer, my dad's side of the family gets together there. This year, they invited me and my boyfriend, Jason, 29M, along with Lily and Eric. The weekend started fine, with the usual hiking, fishing, and board games. On the second night, we had a big dinner in the cabin's main room. Everyone was talking and laughing, when somehow the conversation turned to careers. I work in marketing, and my current project involves a lot of data analysis. It's not glamorous, but I genuinely like it. Eric, in the middle of a casual conversation about work, said, "Wow, that sounds kind of boring. I mean, I wouldn't even know why anyone would do that for fun." I laughed it off awkwardly, thinking maybe he was joking, but he kept going. "It just seems like you're wasting your brain on spreadsheets when you could be doing something meaningful," he said, smirking. Everyone went quiet for a second. I felt my face flush. My dad shot him a look, and Lily tried to laugh it off, saying he was just teasing. I told him I actually enjoy my job and that it's important work. He rolled his eyes and said, "Sure, if you say so. I just can't take people seriously who work in offices all day staring at numbers." At that point, I was done. I didn't want to start a huge argument in front of everyone, so I excused myself to the deck to get some air. Jason followed me, and we sat there for a while. I was furious. I texted Lily later that night, calmly asking if Eric always talks to people like that. She said he can be blunt, but she didn't seem to think it was a big deal. The next morning, Eric apologized vaguely to me, saying, "Sorry if I came off harsh. Didn't mean anything by it." I said I appreciated the apology, but I wasn't really in the mood to interact much. He shrugged and went on with the day. Things seemed to settle until the last night of the trip. We were all sitting around the fire, and Eric made another comment that rubbed me the wrong way. He started joking about how some people are glorified paper pushers, and that real work requires brains and courage. My dad laughed awkwardly, Lily smiled nervously, and Jason looked ready to explode. I finally snapped and said, "You know what, Eric? You've been insulting me all weekend. I don't think you should stay here anymore." There was an immediate silence. Eric looked shocked, like I'd just accused him of a crime. He tried to laugh it off, saying, "Oh, come on. Don't be so sensitive. It's just a joke," I replied. "It's not a joke to me, and it's not appropriate to insult someone repeatedly in front of their family. You need to leave." Lily immediately got defensive, saying I was being dramatic and that Eric didn't mean it. My dad tried to mediate, saying maybe I could just ignore him for one more night. I refused. I said he either leaves or I leave. Jason offered to drive me to a hotel, but my dad finally agreed to ask Eric to leave. Eric was furious, saying I was ruining the family gathering and that this is ridiculous. He left in a huff, slamming the door behind him. After he left, things were tense. Lily was upset with me for embarrassing her fiancé, even though she admitted he had been rude. My dad said he understood why I was upset, but felt I could have handled it more diplomatically. My stepmom stayed quiet, probably because she was worried about how the rest of the family would react. The next day, everyone acted awkwardly around me. Lily barely spoke to me, and Eric hasn't apologized beyond the vague text he sent later. Some of my cousins think I overreacted, saying I should have just ignored him. Others are supportive, saying I have a right to set boundaries. I feel like I did the right thing, because I shouldn't have to tolerate someone insulting me in my own family space. But part of me wonders if I went too far by asking him to leave rather than just keeping my distance. So, AITA for refusing to let my half-sister's fiancé stay at our family cabin after he insulted me repeatedly. Character count, 6,429 if you want. I can make an even longer version that hits closer to 7,000 characters with more dialogue, side drama, and tension buildup. It would feel even more like a viral Reddit post. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé? So, this is a long one, but I really need an outside perspective because my family is completely divided, and I don't know if I'm the unreasonable one here. I, 28F, have a younger sister, Emily, 25F, who I've been close to most of my life. We grew up in a small town, and despite some typical sibling squabbles, we've always had each other's backs. Our parents have also been relatively hands-off when it comes to controlling our life choices, which I appreciate. Emily has been dating her fiancé, Jake, 27M, for about 3 years. When they first started dating, I liked him enough. He seemed polite, had a good job, and they were happy together. But over time, I've noticed a lot of red flags, and it's come to a point where I really cannot support their relationship in good conscience. Jake is controlling in subtle ways that aren't immediately obvious to outsiders. He tries to influence every decision Emily makes, from what she wears to where she eats, and even to which friend she sees. I've tried to address this with her gently over the years, but she usually brushes it off as me being overly critical or jealous. He also has this habit of belittling others in passive-aggressive ways. Nothing overtly abusive in public, but when you're around him, there's this constant undermining vibe. For instance, during one family dinner, my cousin mentioned a promotion at work, and Jake immediately made a joke about how no one would ever really be qualified for their jobs. Everyone laughed awkwardly, but I noticed how uncomfortable it made everyone. The tipping point, honestly, came earlier this year. Emily had been looking for a new apartment closer to her work, and I offered to help her research places. Jake insisted he knew better, even though he wasn't going to live there with her, and dismissed all of our suggestions. I noticed that Emily was visibly frustrated but kept agreeing with him. Later, when I tried to check in with her privately, she said, "It's fine. He's just more experienced in handling these things. You don't understand." That was a red flag for me because Emily has always been independent and confident, and now she seems to constantly defer to him. Fast forward to a few months ago, Emily told me she was engaged and wanted me to be her maid of honor. I froze. I didn't want to hurt her, but I also didn't feel comfortable being part of a wedding where I feel like the groom is controlling and disrespectful. I tried to talk to her honestly. I said something along the lines of, "I don't feel like I can support your wedding the way I want to because of how I feel about Jake. I don't feel safe or comfortable around him." She cried and accused me of being dramatic, saying, "You've never liked him, and now you're trying to ruin my wedding?" I tried to compromise by saying I would help with planning from a distance and attend for a short visit, but she shot that down. She said that if I couldn't fully support her, I wasn't welcome. I told her that I needed to step back completely, and I would not be attending the wedding. That was 6 weeks ago. Since then, my family has been split. My parents say that I should at least try to attend for Emily's sake, even if I don't like Jake, because it's a once-in-a-lifetime event. My dad said, "This is about your sister, not your opinions about the guy." My mom has said similar things, though she understands my concerns, but believes I'm overreacting. My friends have mostly supported me, saying that I can't put myself in a situation where I feel unsafe or disrespected. Emily, on the other hand, is furious. She has stopped talking to me entirely and has been posting on social media about family betrayal and people who choose their feelings over love. Jake hasn't directly reached out to me, but I get the sense that he's happy I won't be at the wedding. A few of my cousins have tried to mediate, but Emily refuses to hear any reasoning. I have tried reaching out to her calmly several times, explaining that my decision isn't about hating her or her happiness, but about not wanting to enable behavior that I think is toxic. She says that by not attending, I'm basically supporting the idea that she made a mistake in choosing him. But honestly, I feel like I would be enabling her to overlook something that could harm her in the long run. Here's where I feel torn. I don't want to permanently damage my relationship with my sister, but I also don't feel like I could betray my instincts and values just to attend a wedding. Part of me wonders if I'm being dramatic and overstepping, but another part feels strongly that this isn't about jealousy. It's about her well-being and my own boundaries. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé? I, 28F, have a younger sister, Emma, 25F, and we've always been close, or at least I thought we were. She's getting married in about a month, and I've been wrestling with whether I should go, because honestly, I'm not sure if I can stomach being in the same room as her fiancé, Jason, 27M. I'm fully aware that on paper, this makes me sound like a terrible sister, but hear me out. Emma and I grew up in a pretty tight-knit family. Our parents were strict but fair, and they expected us to have each other's backs. I was always protective of Emma, partly because she could be a little naive and partly because I was just naturally bossy, I guess. As we got older, we drifted a little during college, but we'd always reconnect over family events or random late-night phone calls. When Emma first started dating Jason, I had some concerns. At first, I tried to keep them to myself because I didn't want to seem judgmental. Jason is charming on the surface. He's outgoing, confident, and funny. But there were small things that rubbed me the wrong way. He would make jokes at Emma's expense, sometimes subtle, sometimes not. She'd laugh it off, and I'd chalk it up to her being used to his humor. Things escalated when they started talking seriously about marriage. Emma would tell me things like, Jason said I should drop a couple of pounds before the wedding, but he was joking, or he thinks I'm too emotional sometimes. Each time, I would try to talk to her gently about it, but she would brush it off. I felt like she was in denial or maybe too blinded by love to see the red flags. Then came the engagement party. Jason's family is very wealthy, and they went all out. Fancy venue, expensive gifts, catered food. The night started fine, but then I noticed Jason getting a little aggressive with the staff, barking orders and rolling his eyes at the waiters. Emma seemed embarrassed but didn't say anything. Later, he cornered me and made a joke about my weight, which I politely ignored, but it left a bad taste in my mouth. I told Emma about it afterward, and she said I was overreacting, that he was just joking, and that I shouldn't be so sensitive. Over the past few months, the pattern has continued. I've witnessed him belittle Emma in small ways, making comments about her career choices, her friends, her hobbies. She brushes it off, saying he's just being honest, or he loves me, it's fine. I feel like she's slowly being manipulated, and it terrifies me. She's usually strong-willed and independent, but I see her confidence wobbling when he's around. About a month ago, I confronted Emma more directly. I said, I think Jason isn't good for you. I've seen him treat you badly, and I don't want to sit by and watch it continue. She got really defensive and accused me of trying to ruin her relationship. She said I was jealous or controlling and that I didn't understand him like she did. It was one of the worst arguments we've ever had. Now, the wedding is coming up, and I feel like if I attend, I'll be validating the relationship and turning a blind eye to the way he treats her. I've considered going for her sake, but I can't shake the feeling that being there would make me complicit. I tried to explain this to my parents, and they were shocked. They said I couldn't let personal feelings ruin such an important day, and that I should put Emma's happiness above my discomfort. I told them I cared about Emma's happiness, but that happiness built on subtle abuse isn't real happiness. They accused me of being dramatic and told me I'd regret missing it. I'm torn because I love Emma, and I want her to have the support of her family, but I also feel like showing up would betray my own principles and my sense of what's right. Part of me worries that refusing to go will permanently damage our relationship, but another part of me feels like I have to stand firm. I haven't told anyone in Emma's circle that I might skip the wedding because of Jason. I imagine it will come as a huge shock, especially since I've always been the fun, supportive sister. I also know that some people will accuse me of being selfish or dramatic, but I honestly feel like attending would make me complicit in a situation I see as toxic. I don't expect Emma to call off her wedding, and I know she's probably made her choice. I just feel like I'm trapped between my desire to protect my sister and my own need to maintain my integrity and emotional well-being. So, Reddit, AITA for seriously considering not attending my sister's wedding because of her fiancé, even though it might hurt her feelings and upset my family. AITA for refusing to let my sister move back in with me after she got out of rehab. I, 34 am, have lived in the same apartment for the last 5 years. I rent a 2-bedroom unit in a decent part of town. My sister, Sarah, 31F, has always had a rocky relationship with stability. Jobs, housing, finances, everything seems to fall apart for her at one point or another. I've helped her out in the past, usually by letting her crash at my place when she was between apartments or by loaning her money for rent or bills. I do it because I love her, but I also have boundaries that I try to stick to. About 6 months ago, Sarah checked herself into rehab for alcohol and prescription pill abuse. I was incredibly proud of her decision, and I made it clear that I would support her recovery. She stayed in the facility for 3 months, and during that time, I would send her encouraging messages and even drove 2 hours each weekend to visit her. I felt like we were really making progress in repairing our relationship, which had always been strained due to her tendency to burn bridges and her pattern of self-sabotage. When she got out, she called me and asked if she could move back in with me temporarily. At first, I hesitated because I have a roommate, Mark, who's been living with me for 3 years, and I wasn't sure how he'd feel. Mark has always been straightforward but private. He enjoys a calm, stable environment. I explained to Sarah that I would need to check with Mark first, and I also mentioned that our place isn't very big. She was a little defensive, insisting that she didn't want to be homeless or return to her parents' house, and that moving in with me would be temporary until I get back on my feet. I had a long talk with Mark, who basically said he wasn't comfortable having Sarah move in. He was worried that her recovery might be jeopardized if she felt stressed or uncomfortable living in a shared space. And he also pointed out that he values his privacy, especially after a long workday. I appreciated his honesty and agreed that I needed to consider both of them. I then told Sarah that unfortunately, I couldn't let her move in right now because of the living situation. I also offered to help her look for an affordable studio apartment or a sober living facility, and I promised to cover her first month's rent or a deposit if she needed it. I thought this was a fair compromise, helping her get back on her feet without upsetting the stability in my own home. Sarah, however, was furious. She accused me of throwing her out right after rehab and said I was punishing her for getting sober. She argued that I loved her when she was doing well, but now I was abandoning her when she needed support the most. She told me that no one else would take her in and that I was supposed to be her family, implying that helping her financially wasn't enough. She also called Mark selfish, saying he should be accommodating because family comes first. I tried to reason with her calmly. I explained that helping her find a place and covering part of her expenses was still significant support, but she didn't want to hear it. She told me that I didn't understand recovery because I had never struggled with anything serious, and that this was a chance for me to prove I loved her. I felt trapped between wanting to support her and needing to respect my roommate and my own mental health. The situation escalated over the next week. Sarah started texting me daily, guilt-tripping me with statements like, "I could be dead right now if you didn't care," or "You're choosing Mark over your own sister." She also started calling my workplace, which was completely inappropriate, leaving messages about how I was being cruel. I blocked her temporarily to prevent myself from responding emotionally, and that made her even angrier. Our parents got involved, and they criticized me for being unsupportive and heartless, even though I had been providing financial and emotional support from a distance. A few days later, my building manager told me that someone matching Sarah's description had been asking about sublet to my building and claiming I said she could move in. I clarified that this was not true, but it made me feel unsafe and more anxious about the whole situation. I ended up getting a security system installed for peace of mind. I have tried multiple times to mediate, suggesting things like temporary stays in nearby sober living houses, paying for therapy sessions, or helping her find a job so she could afford her own place. She refused all of it. She told me that nothing else counts, and that my refusal to let her move in was evidence I didn't care. Now, several months have passed, and she is living with our parents temporarily. She still texts me frequently to complain and guilt me about not letting her move in. My parents are frustrated with me, and even some mutual friends have expressed mixed opinions. I feel like I'm doing everything I can to support her without sacrificing my own stability and safety, but she doesn't see it that way. I know it might look bad on the surface. My sister just got out of rehab, and I didn't offer her my home, but I honestly believe that allowing her to move in would have been a step backward for both her recovery and my own household. I also have a responsibility to my roommate, who has rights to privacy and peace in our home. AITA for refusing to let my sister move back in after rehab, even though I'm helping her in other ways. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss new uploads. And feel free to leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean the world to me. See you in the next video.